Good Saturday evening. I'm meteorologist Nicholas Herboso with an update on Hurricane Beryl, which is approaching the Windward Islands at this time. We're going to be breaking down all the things you need to know, looking at the short-range forecast and the long-range forecast. I am meteorologist Nicholas Herboso with Fox 10 News. Let's go ahead and break down what we have here. We're going to start with the currents as of the 7 o'clock Central Time advisory. This is a Category 1 hurricane with winds of 80 miles per hour. It has rather quickly strengthened over the course of the day today, now moving closer towards the Windward Islands and moving rather quickly with a forward speed, I should say, west at 22 miles per hour. We're going to take a look at the high resolution imagery here. So let me pull this up full and you can take a look at this. This is the latest satellite picture, and one thing that we have noticed, the little white areas there, those are bubbling tall thunderstorms near the center of circulation. Right now, Hurricane Beryl, as of 8 p.m. Central Time, is developing a core, and this small core will allow it to strengthen rather rapidly over the next little bit here. It has already been strengthening efficiently, but I think now this gets going even further, and we could be looking at a major hurricane approaching the Windward Islands. So once again, an 80 mile per hour hurricane at this time, Category 1, with pressure of 990 millibars that has been steadily going down. The forecast track has this thing approaching the Windward Islands by early morning Monday, so pretty much Sunday night there, before crossing into the Caribbean Monday afternoon, and then continuing on a northwest track, west-northwest track, through the Caribbean as a major hurricane, Category 3. We could see that this storm exceeds Category 3 strength. Some models are indicating that. That is something that we will have to watch closely. We'll have to watch the intensification over the next day or so. Either way, the forecast cone continues this thing south of the island of Hispaniola, so Haiti, Dominican Republic, as a major hurricane, then approaches the island of Jamaica there. That is Wednesday that it gets near Jamaica. Notice that there is a little bit of range in the track. The track does get wider. Also remember that this forecast cone is looking at where the center of the storm will go, and impacts will extend outside of the cone possibly. In fact, they will. Now let's take a look at the satellite once again, kind of get us another view of this storm. Hurricane Beryl, just to the east of the Windward Islands, has some time before it gets there. By Sunday night, preparations need to be absolutely done in the Windward Islands. As this storm approaches, hurricane preparations need to be done. You need to prepare for the possibility of a significant storm. Our three-dimensional satellite shows us those bubbling thunderstorms near the center. You can see the tall towering cloud tops there indicated in the blacks and especially the whites. This is developing a core, a central core that is going to allow it to strengthen even further. So looking at the near term now, we want to look at impacts for the Windward Islands. Let's first talk about wind, because this is going to be possibly a major hurricane, likely a major hurricane. This is the GFS forecast model. Anywhere you see in that darker orange, that is hurricane force winds. So St. Vincent and the Grenadines likely dealing with hurricane force winds if this model verifies and the core tracks that way. There's a little variation in the core. We could see other islands seeing that area of hurricane or maybe even major hurricane force winds. Elsewhere, there's a wide area in that lighter orange of tropical storm force winds. That's why we have hurricane watches, hurricane warnings, tropical storm watches and warnings out for those areas. Continuing on in this forecast, it continues into the Caribbean as a major hurricane. GFS has it just south of Hispaniola Tuesday afternoon before moving towards Jamaica. Possible hurricane impacts to Jamaica if the center gets near enough there and if the strength is maintained. And then it continues to move east. We do note that in the longer range forecast, we do have some weakening indicated. I'm talking once it gets deeper into the Caribbean. So that is something to note, that as a result of some wind shear that it will be moving into. What about the environment this is moving to water-wise? We have very warm waters ahead of this, well above average, temperature in the mid 80s Fahrenheit. This is enough fuel. This is very much substantial fuel for thunderstorms to be supported, for this hurricane to be supported. And in fact, the ocean water is rather warm, deep. The deep ocean water is warm. You can see areas in yellow there. That is where we have warm water that stretches a level down. So that means even with churning of the ocean water as a storm moves across, they'll still have warm water to take up, and warm waters are what tropical systems need. So now let's focus now on the spaghetti plots, and we're going to look at some of the longer range forecast here. So there's that track. You can see it's going to be moving over that area of high ocean heat content, warm water that is deep. The forecast models show it moving across this area. Notice how tight they are as they go through the Windward Islands in the Eastern Caribbean. South of the Dominican Republic and Haiti, they're also pretty tightly clustered there. There does get to be just a little bit of spread, just a little bit, once we get to that day 5 time frame. We're talking Thursday. Beyond Thursday, some questions remain. Could we see a weakness in a ridge that is over the southeastern United States that allows this thing to maybe track a little bit more to the north? Or do we see this plowing into the Yucatan or even taking a southerly track? This long-range forecast, there are still some questions, so we need to keep an eye on it, of course, wherever you are in the Western Caribbean or even in the Gulf Coast, just to keep an eye on it. But right now, we have no immediate concern for the U.S. Gulf Coast, no immediate concern, but we will be watching, of course. If you're in the Western Caribbean, you need to keep a very close eye on this. Now, we mentioned the ridge that's over the southeastern United States. Well, we will have that, and that will help us out keeping this thing moving west for us here on the Gulf Coast. Here's the current steering flow. You see this big red area. There's a large, expansive upper level ridge that is going to keep this thing moving to the west, and you will see the blue circle pop up. That is Beryl. There is a little weakness in the ridge. In fact, we will get a little bit of a trough that develops here that will be providing some shear in the Caribbean, and that will shear the system a little bit. As I mentioned, we are expecting a little bit of a weakening as this thing gets into the Western Caribbean. But we have the Brocking Ridge in place over the southeastern United States. Does that ridge stay strong? It's a question, but indications are that it's still there. It is very difficult for a tropical system to plow right into a ridge. But once again, a little bit of uncertainty in this long-range forecast. We just want you to stay tuned. So the official forecast track from the National Hurricane Center is the thing to follow. This is, once again, for where the center of the storm will go, the Windward Islands. You're expecting a major hurricane. Preparations need to be made right now for hurricane force winds. We showed those earlier. Tropical storm force winds, storm surge, and flooding rainfall. All of those impacts are on the table for the Windward Islands. Beyond this, we have a strong hurricane, Category 3, possibly weakening to Category 2 thanks to wind shear as it approaches Jamaica. Jamaica, you need to keep a very close eye on this. And also just general, the Western Caribbean needs to keep a very close eye on this thing. Beyond this 5-day cone from the National Hurricane Center, there is uncertainty. We will watch. No immediate concerns out of this cone at this time. So once again, this is Hurricane Beryl. Next update coming up relatively soon, but I wanted to get this video out here. 80 miles per hour as of the 7 p.m. advisory, and strengthening is the story. Elsewhere in the tropics, we do have 2 other areas. Invest 94L over the Yucatan right now. It'll move into the southwestern Gulf of Mexico. Has the possibility of developing into a very brief depression. Maybe a storm, but most likely a tropical depression. It would be short-lived. We'll be watching that. Main impacts from that will be heavy rainfall in Mexico. And then there is a system behind Beryl, which will likely move right in Beryl's footsteps. Right now has a high chance of development over the next 7 days, something we will watch down the road. It's your tropical update for now. I'm meteorologist Nicholas Herboso.